Welcome back to Relatable Wisdom, the podcast where everyday people share the quotes that have shaped their lives, inviting us all to reflect and grow together. Today, we're joined by Linda Grizely, a personal finance expert and empowering speaker who helps women reconnect with their self-worth and transform their relationship with money. With a heart full of compassion and a no-nonsense approach, Linda draws from her own journey of resilience to guide others toward clarity and self-trust. Let's dive into Linda's world and discover the wisdom that has inspired her path. Okay, tell me your name and what you do.
I'm Linda Grizely, and I am an educator and speaker on personal finance. I help people help them understand finance, all things finances, and bring in the emotional component to it. So it's not just about teaching them how to budget or teaching them how to plan or teaching them about saving and debt and all that. It's about all the things that go into you as a person and how you feel about money and how you react to money and what your stories are, and help you understand why you do the things that you do with money and why maybe you're not moving forward or doing the success, having the success that you want with money based on your money personality and the stories that you're telling yourself about money, things like that. So it's all combined, the financial part along with the emotional part.
Thank you, Linda, for being a guest on the podcast today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. What's the quote you want to share with me today?
You can't live a life you love on a budget you hate.
What does this mean? Let me make sense of it.
Sure. So it has to do with what I just said about how I combine finances and the emotional aspects of it. Because so many of us, when we try to budget and we try to put numbers together, it's hard because you're thinking of all these things that are responsibilities and trying to figure out what you're spending, but yet you never have a place for yourself in that money, like in that budget. So I created something that's called Me Money, and it's a way of budgeting where you add yourself to your budget as an expense so that you have an amount of money that you can spend unapologetically. That means that you don't have to answer to anyone, even yourself, about spending that money on you. And it allows you to flip the idea of budgeting from one of restriction to one of abundance. Instead of what I can't spend or the only amount I can spend, it's more like, what am I choosing to spend? So it just kind of flips that script around and makes you look at it differently.
Wow. I want us to step back, right? What was the exact moment these quotes felt real, like it truly hit you, where you come to the realization that, I can't build the life I love on a budget I hate?
So the exact moment was really when I realized, because I put my husband on a budget. So there's a lot of things that go into it, but the real moment was I put my husband on a budget and then I put myself on the same budget. And what it did was just eye-opening, because for him, he was the one spending money and it gave him intention for his money. So instead of just buying things, he was thinking about, do I value this enough to spend my money on it? There was just a bigger thought process. And then for me, it was the opposite, because it was freeing, because I was the one who was always like, oh, I can't afford that. And I wouldn't spend that much money on myself. But then it became, now I have this money set aside and now I can spend this money on myself. So that was where it started. And then as I had other people implement it and try it, I realized that it worked for almost any money personality. And what it does is it gives intention to the person themselves. It gives intention to what they're spending on themselves. And it gives them a way to value what they're spending their money on. Like, is their money worthy of this purchase? And so through that exercise came the idea that people now were able to budget because they were just looking at it differently. They were looking at it from a place of empowerment rather than a place of restriction. And so that where it was like, they were like, yes, I get it now. And that's where it was like, you can't live a life you love on a budget you hate. If your budget is based around restriction, then you're going to hate that because you're going to feel, constrained. But if your budget is based upon putting you first and giving you the amount of money that you're allowed to spend, and you get to choose and place value on things based on, if you say yes to something now, you might say no to it later. It was just very much empowering. So that's how it all came about.
Yeah. Still on the what's the word, the emotional aspect. When you came to this realization and you're like, okay, let everything change. This is how I'm going to do the budgeting. How did it feel the first time you did it right? Where you're like, okay, yeah, I'm going to put myself in the budget, put my husband in the budget.
So when I put him on the budget, I told him, I'm going to put you on a budget because you're spending too much money. You don't have any idea what you're spending. And he was like, oh, you're going to put me on a budget. Are you going to get the same budget? And I said, yeah, I'm going to give myself the same budget, like same household, same lifestyle. We get the same amount. So in the beginning, I was, putting my money aside, and then at one point I was doing something and realized that there was something that I wanted, but I would never before have justified spending that money on myself. And I was like, well, I want this, but can I really spend that money? And then I was like, well, yeah, I can, because I already have it set aside. It's already said this money is for me. This is my me money. And so I was able to go out and spend it. And that is when like it really all came together. Like the idea of it was like, this is something big. This is something really. And I've worked with in financial planning, I did cash flow and budgeting with clients all the time,
Yeah.
every day. We're talking about what money's coming in and what money's going out. We're always talking about all the expenses, what they have for their home, their clothes, all the things that you need, but never for themselves. And so it was just really mind blowing the difference that it made once I started putting this into practice.
Yeah. Over the course of, the few minutes we've been talking, one of the key phrase you keep mentioning is the word budget you hate. Now, I'm curious, how do we go about, because the budget you hate is quite different from the budget I hate. How do we define a budget you hate? And what are some signs we might be living? We have one, right? How do we tell that, oh yeah, I have a budget that I hate?
Yeah. So everybody's budget, everybody's numbers are going to be completely different, vastly different, right?
Yeah.
Because everybody has a different lifestyle, they have different income, they have different things that they need. So there's no right way for me to say like this is exactly how you do it. In my course, I take you through a couple of things. So I take you through a money personality exercise that helps you identify what your money personality is. And it just helps you understand why you do the things you do with money. And then I go through a quick exercise on how you come up with your me money number. And it has to do with just paying attention to what you do for a couple of weeks on what money you're spending on yourself. And then thinking about the things that you do maybe that you didn't do in that couple of weeks to figure out what that number is, to just have a starting point. So it's that simple. You just kind of like look at it and say, here's an average, here's a good idea of what it is. So you have a starting point. So we start there, and then we also go into another module where we build out a whole entire budget that is what's coming in and what's going out. So you have a starting point, and then you got to do the work. Like you can keep it at the starting point and not do the work, and that's fine. You just have to like keep,
Let's take a quick pause. If you're enjoying this conversation and want more thought-provoking ideas straight to your inbox, join the Relatable Wisdom email list. It's free, quick, and filled with bite-sized insights, inspiring quotes, and behind-the-scenes reflections from our guests. Just head to relatablewisdom.com/join. That is relatablewisdom.com/join, or tap the link in the show notes. And hey, subscribing to the podcast helps more than you think, and it's free. So if you haven't already, hit that follow button wherever you're listening. All right, let's get back to the conversation.
Monitoring it and make sure that you're not overspending. And then when you do the actual work and you figure out what's coming in and what's going out, usually there's a gray area where people don't know where their money's going.
Yeah.
And so we use that part as part of the, is this your me money number, or is this something you should be saving? Where is this money going? And it helps you like really do like a logistical way of figuring out what your me money number is. And then you can compare it to the other number you came up with. And really there's not an exact formula, but those two processes should help you realize where about you should be. And then you can assign that number. And I always recommend opening a separate account or keeping that money separate somehow so that you're being very intentional and, keeping it contained so that there's a structure and a framework to it.
Yeah. Well, that's a full process and a full system. When you were explaining the quotes at the very beginning, you mentioned, no, not the quotes. When you were introducing yourself, you mentioned that you have people, you're financial coach that helps people, talk about the emotional aspects of money too. And for me, one of the things with this school, one of the things I see is that a lot of persons, right, they, especially the financially disciplined ones, they still feel trapped or guilty whenever they spend money on themselves.
Yeah, yeah. So there's 5 different money personalities. So, and these aren't something that I came up with. They're out there and different people call them different things.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
there's a spender, a saver, an avoider, a risk taker, and a security seeker. So your spender is going to be the person who is, letting money flow out. Like it could be on themselves, it could be on other people, but they're just spending money and maybe they're not tracking how much they're spending. And so that's like my husband when I said he was spending too much. And so putting that number around it gives them that gives them a space to actually choose something that they value. Like if I say yes to this now, I might be saying no to something later. And, or if I say no to this now, I can say yes to something later. So it just gives them, there's just a lot more thought process that goes into their spending. And that's why it works for them. And then the saver is more like me, someone who says, like, I would never spend this amount on myself. And maybe it's something that you might ask for somebody for a gift or something where you wouldn't spend it on yourself, but maybe somebody else could spend it on you. But this gives you that permission. That's what it did for me. Now, for a person that avoids money, that tends to not think about it at all and doesn't want to pay attention to it, whether they think it's complicated or it's scary or it just gives them like a bad feeling just to try to look at their
yeah,
money, that person, it gives them, it gives them more intention and structure, and it gives them a reason to look at their money. And then maybe they can still do the avoider stuff on everything else. Maybe they don't want to go through the whole budget process, but they can still implement the me money part to try to give a little bit of structure. It gives them something to move forward on. And then if you have a person who is a risk taker, let's say, that's a person who is always like, oh, let's try this, let's do that, and they're like, go big and like, just let's do things that are possible. And that's more spontaneity. Like it's like you're doing things on a whim and you can still do that, but at least it keeps you reined in a little bit. Like and then you're still making like better choices with that because you're thinking more about it. And then a security seeker is someone who always wants to have a path or a plan, and they want to know that everything is safe. And so by having this separate amount, they still have that footing and that trust in that plan and everything else. But they have this little bit of flexibility with themselves where they can spend this money on themselves and they don't have to worry about it ruining their plan. So a lot of times, like the security seeker will be like, oh, not that I can't afford that, but if I do that, then I'm going to mess up my plan because this is a plan I have. But now,
yeah,
now you are a part of your plan.
yeah,
So
yeah,
that's the difference. Yeah.
yeah. Um, one of the things you mentioned in the form is that, you know, you you mentioned that being messy, emotional, or even scared, yet still making good money decisions. How, like, how can we embrace that imperfection?
Well,
Ah,
here's the thing. Here's what I want everybody to know. I want everybody to know that everybody is imperfect and everybody is imperfect with their money. Even
okay.
people that have a lot of money are still very imperfect with their money. And I think that having meeting with people and doing financial planning, which I'm not doing anymore, I'm just doing education now, but having that experience and talking to people with a lot of money, they still have mind blocks. They still have things that they were told about money and stories that they carry that hold them back from being even more successful than they already are with their money. They have the same things, it's just on a different level. Um, so what I want people to know is that you're not alone. And if you're struggling and you're figuring things out, that's fine. Today's the first day of the rest of your life, right? So start being
Yeah,
intentional, start paying attention to things, understand money because money is something that we deal with every moment of every day. It's like breathing. You never get away from it. Even when you're
yeah,
sleeping, you're spending money. Money's going out the door when when
uh,
you're sleeping. So you better pay attention to it. It's an important part of life.
yeah. For me, I know you mentioned that one of the things you talked about is just while answering this question is people have financial system that is restricting them, holding them instead of helping them get the life they want, instead of helping them um, become better and reach their goals and all that. Uh, I know this question might sound similar to the previous one I asked, but it's a little bit different. And that is, how do you know when your financial system, or whatever the title might be, financial system, budget, whatever the name might be, is working for you, not against
So I think that the way you know is when you feel good about it, because most people don't feel good about their money system, right? So you know it's working for you when you're feeling good about it. When you feel like you're meeting your needs for yourself now, but you're also meeting your needs for your future self, because saving is important too. So you don't want to spend all your money. You want to be saving. You need to have an emergency fund to know that if something happens, that you're able to cover it. So when I talk about getting your me money and putting yourself on your budget, I'm still saying you still need to save. You need to do all the things that you would normally be told to do as far as planning goes. It's just that you need to be able to take care of yourself along the way.
Yeah. And thank you so much, Linda, for sharing this quote. As a final way of of closing the episode, what's a small, simple, practical step my listeners can take this week or today, safe? No, what am I even saying? This week is very long, but today to help align their money habits with a life they love, right? So that the budget and the life, everything is aligned, and not this one is going this way, this is going this other way.
I would say just think with intention each time you spend money and ask yourself, if I buy this thing, if I say yes to this now, what might I be saying no to later? And if you feel like there's
Mm.
something you'd rather have in the future, then maybe you need to say no now so you can say yes later.
That's really simple and straight to the point. Thank you so much, Linda. Where can listeners learn more? You mentioned the money, the me money, and so some other concepts you mentioned. Where can we learn more about those things from you, and where can we connect with
The best place to go is my website, because all
you?
my
Okay.
social media, my information is there, and it's lindagriz.com,
Can you?
Linda. Yep. lindagriz.com. And then there's a resources page where you can take a free money personality quiz or a money confidence quiz, and a few other things that you can download if you're interested.
Yeah, yeah. I was about to ask you to spell it out, and then before I was about saying that, you started spelling it out, so I had to like stop midway.
No worries.
Thank you so much. I'll be sure to put the links in the description and show notes so listeners can just click and go directly to your site. Thank you so much, Lynn.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it, Wisdom.
Yeah, my pleasure. You've been listening to Relatable Wisdom, and I've been your host, Wisdom Okonkwo. You've been listening to the podcast where every story, quote, and insight helps you see life a little differently. If you enjoyed today's episode, follow the show on your favorite podcast app and share it with someone who loved the conversation. For more inspiring voices and timeless wisdom, visit relatablewisdom.com. Until next time, keep living, learning, and collecting wisdom that matters most to you.